In lands forgotten by time, in deserts, jungles, and icy plains, stand monuments no modern mind can truly explain. Tall, silent, unshakable, obelisks, carved from single stones, lifted without machines, aligned with stars, marked with symbols no one can read. We do not know who made them. We cannot move them. And no matter how we try, we cannot recreate them. Were they tools, messages, or markers? Tonight, we journey through the towering enigmas of the ancient world, into stone that defies gravity, into shadows that never fall, and into secrets buried in the sky itself. This is not legend. This is not myth. These are the most mysterious ancient obelisks, and why no one can recreate them. Chapter 1. The obelisk that was never finished. A massive stone monolith half-hewn from living rock. An unfinished obelisk lying on its side in the Aswan quarry. It was meant to rise over 20 meters toward the sky. But it never did. Its fate sealed in silence for millennia. This is not a story of failure. It is a story of mystery, and of an ancient craftsmanship so precise. It still torments modern engineers. High on the west bank of the Nile, at Aswan, a quarry of pink granite stretches along the river. Pharaohs sent their artisans here to extract the hardest stone. Stone meant for tombs, for temples, and for eternity. They used dolerite pounders to chip away at the living rock, and copper saws to cut through stone so dense it glowed faintly in torchlight. But one day, as the workers neared completion of the greatest block they had ever attempted, something went wrong. The obelisk that was never finished remains where it was abandoned. Nearly 1,000 tons of pink granite, still attached to its bedrock. Its lower half carved smooth, its upper half untouched. An accidental monument to an unknown problem. Look closely at the sides of the monolith. The surfaces are polished. The edges are razor sharp. Corners so straight they cast perfect right-angle shadows at noon. There are no tool marks beyond the deliberate chisel lines that guided each cut. It is as if the workers paused mid-work and walked away forever. Why abandon the greatest project in the quarry? Why leave such perfection incomplete? National Geographic calls it the world's largest monolith. But the mystery lies not in its size, but in its stillness. Over the years, scholars have put forward explanations. Some believe the stone cracked along an unseen fault line, a hairline fracture spreading silently from deep within. When the granite split, the pharaoh's overseers halted the operation, for fear the entire block would shatter. Others argue the weight was too great to move, that the ancient engineers miscalculated leverage, and the giant obelisk could not be safely raised. Yet modern experiments have shown that granite of this hardness can be moved with simple levers and rollers. Egyptian ramps, sledges, and lubricated tracks could have succeeded, if only the workforce had remained on task. A chemical analysis of the granite shows no internal weakness. No fissures, no bubbles, no hidden cracks. The stone remains flawless, except for the fact it was never freed. Beneath the unfinished obelisk lie a series of channels carved into the bedrock. 4 grooves running parallel to one another. They look like sliding tracks but lead nowhere. Some archaeologists suggest these were intended to cradle wooden beams for leverage. Others say they were ritual grooves, to channel sacred water around the monolith before lifting. But the channels are too perfect to be mere debris pathways. They end abruptly at the rock face, as if the plan for the obelisk changed, or as if someone decided the obelisk would never move. The ambient noise in the quarry is muted. The desert wind wraps itself around the stone. Camels pause, tourists whisper, but the monolith does not answer. It lies in silent testimony to an ancient endeavor. Engineers today bring cranes, hydraulics, sonar scanners, but their machines reveal only more questions. A massive cavity beneath the block, too small to explain a collapse. An unrecorded fault line that does not exist. And a magnetic anomaly along the east flank of the rock. The earth itself behaves differently here, as if something ancient still pulses beneath the granite. Local legend speaks of a curse on the unfinished obelisk, that the pharaoh's soul inhabited the stone, and only divine permission could free it. Priests were called. Chanting and offerings took place on full moons. But the chants never ended in movement. The monolith stayed rooted. Some fringe theories propose the obelisk was never meant for the sky, that it was a marker of ley lines intersecting in the desert, a terrestrial compass etched in stone, never intended to leave its birthplace. In recent decades, UNESCO engineers have proposed finishing the cut and transporting the obelisk to a museum for study. But every time drilling begins, sensors warn of shifting stress. Minor tremors ripple through the bedrock, and instruments fail inexplicably. The site is now under careful watch. No heavy machinery is allowed, only gentle probes. Archaeologists tread lightly, as if afraid to disturb something sleeping deep within the stone. A pharaoh's dream trapped in granite. A colossal promise unfulfilled. The obelisk that was never finished invites us to ask, what could have caused the ancients to stop? Was it fear of breaking the world they knew? A strike by the gods? Or a secret lost with the laborers who carved the first wedge and vanished before the final cut? Perhaps we will never know. Some monuments are destined to remain immovable, not by choice, but by mystery, and in their stillness lies the truth, that some ancient secrets were never meant to be set free. Chapter 2. The map hidden in a standing stone. It stands in a field, alone, weathered by time, shaped by hands long gone. Its surface appears plain to the casual eye, but beneath centuries of erosion lies something else. Etchings, lines, coordinates. A map, perhaps not of land, but of power. This is the obelisk that should have been decoration, yet may hold the blueprint to a forgotten world. In the village of Abgig, far from the pyramids and temples, a singular granite obelisk rises out of the earth. It is not as tall as those of Karnak or Luxor, nor polished like the royal pillars of Rome, but it draws pilgrims, tourists, and quietly, scholars. Because on one face of the stone, faint engravings remain, lines carved with such precision that no modern vandal or weather pattern could be responsible. They seem to form pathways, circles, grids, but no language surrounds them. No gods, no kings, no dedications. Only geometry. When the lines were first noticed in the 1960s, archaeologists assumed they were modern graffiti, until satellite imagery of the Nile Delta revealed an eerie match. The configuration on the stone mirrored river forks, ancient canals, and forgotten irrigation lines. That predated written Egyptian history. Who could have mapped the delta before maps existed? And why etch it into an obelisk? Meant to point not just upward, but outward? A geologist from Cairo University ran a LiDAR scan and discovered depth irregularities, suggesting the lines weren't etched but inlaid. Traces of a mineral, no longer present, that had once filled the grooves, possibly glowing in moonlight. The map had not just been carved, it had been designed to be seen at night. In 2015, a group of researchers proposed that the map align not just to the Nile, but to ancient fault lines, and even more curiously, to magnetic anomalies in the Earth's crust. Every major node on the carved grid correlated to high-energy intersections, power centers, ley lines if one dared use the term, but the ancient Egyptians had no magnetic instruments. So how did they know? Was it coincidence? Or was the stone a memory, left behind by someone before them? Astrophysicists joined the study in 2017, matching the lines on the obelisk not to the Earth, but to the sky. Star positions: Orion, Sirius, Polaris. The stone, when viewed from above, seemed to mirror both land and heavens, as if it was never meant to point in one direction, but in all directions at once. The tip of the obelisk was found to have once held a small capstone, now missing. Gold? Quartz? No one knows. But it completed the circuit. A conductor? A symbol? Or something else? Ancient records from nearby towns mention a stone of guidance, erected before the time of the first pharaoh. No one knows who placed it there. Local legend claims it was not built, but pulled from the earth. That phrase, pulled, bothers researchers, because the granite of the obelisk does not match any nearby source. The nearest quarry is 600 kilometers south, and yet the stone is seamless, untouched, as if it had always been there. Even erosion tells a confusing tale. Some sides are far older than others, as if time itself respected certain carvings, and wore away only the rest. Teams have tried to scan and digitally reconstruct the map, but every version they build returns errors, coordinates that lead to nowhere, points that shift when overlaid on modern terrain. One researcher believes the stone map wasn't static, but dynamic, based on a shifting planetary model, where obelisks across the world formed a global system of alignment. Her paper was rejected, then mysteriously pulled offline. She now refuses interviews. In 2021, a team attempted ground-penetrating radar beneath the obelisk. They found an unexpected void, a hollow space roughly 2 meters deep, shaped like a dome. No access point, no tunnel, just a sealed cavity beneath the base of the stone. The team returned the next day to find their equipment unresponsive, and one member sick with unexplained vertigo. They did not return a third day. Now, the stone remains untouched, a quiet monument with no name, holding a map no one can follow, and secrets no one can retrieve. What kind of people carve a map into a monument made to last forever, then leave no record behind? What power or purpose was tied to that pattern? Maybe the obelisk was more than a pillar. Maybe it was a key, not to a place, but to a way of seeing the world. Long forgotten, a geometry of the divine, buried in plain sight. And if we cannot read it now, perhaps we were never meant to. Chapter 3. The monument that points to nowhere. Rising above a temple courtyard, it stands alone beneath the blistering sun. An obelisk whose purpose seems lost to time. No inscriptions remain. No gods or pharaohs claim its sides, yet it was carved, transported, and erected with great care. And today, it points nowhere. At the ruins of Tanis in the Nile Delta, archaeologists discovered an obelisk marooned among fallen columns. Unlike its neighbors, it bears no hieroglyphs, only smooth, unmarked granite. Its taper is perfect, its base set in a foundation of cut stone, aligned precisely to the cardinal points, but pointing at nothing notable on the horizon. Villagers call it the silent guide. But guides to what, they cannot say. When modern surveyors measured its azimuth, they expected alignment with ancient temples or star rises. Instead, they found it aimed directly at empty desert plains, miles from any known settlement or sacred site. One astronomer suggested it pointed to the summer solstice sunrise. Yet on the solstice, the sun rises 15 degrees to the north, not along the obelisk's line, and satellite imagery reveals no buried structures. At its extended bearing, no buried tombs, no hidden temples. Nothing. It points to nothing. In the 1980s, a seismic survey beneath the obelisk revealed a shallow chamber directly beneath its base, a rectangular void lined with granite blocks. Without entrance or exit, geologists drilled a borehole and lowered a camera. What they saw were 4 granite pillars, symmetrically arranged, supporting an unseen ceiling. A chamber built before the obelisk stood above it. Yet the obelisk's foundation is monolithic. No access shaft, no service lid. How was the stone lowered in place? Without disturbing that chamber? Speculation abounds. Some claim the obelisk marks the spot of a buried star map. Others say it's a vector, a directional marker for processions long erased by sand. A few whisper about portals and gateways, aligned to energy lines unseen by mortal eyes. But none of the theories fit the facts. Each hypothesis fails to explain the silent chamber, the lack of inscriptions, and the exact bearing toward an empty horizon. Centuries of sandstorms should have rounded its edges, yet the capital remains crisp. Meteorological analysis shows prevailing winds strike at 30-degree angles, yet the obelisk's faces show no differential erosion. It is as if the winds simply flow around it, as if the stone repels time's forces, preserving its shape against nature itself. In 2019, a team of engineers attempted to replicate its bearing. They erected a mock obelisk with GPS alignment, but the weight, the base vibrations, and subtle magnetic interference caused their instruments to fail. No meter held a steady reading. Within 50 meters of the original, even their laser levels skewed unpredictably. They retreated, calling it equipment stress. Locals say they fled in fear, haunted by a presence they could not name. Nearby, 2 ruined statues slump in the sand, faces hidden by time. They once flanked the obelisk's pedestal, watching pilgrims pass. Now they watch the stone itself. Some visitors leave offerings, dates, coins, small trinkets, hoping for answers, for direction. But the obelisk remains, unmoved, pointing forever, into empty space. An obelisk without inscription, pointing to nowhere, bears silent testimony to an unknown purpose. Was it a survey marker for an empire erased? A calibration point for a sky we can no longer read? Or a warning to look inward, rather than outward, for the meaning we seek? Some monuments demand to be understood. This one demands the question itself. And in its silence, we find the greatest mystery of all. Why some ancient secrets were meant to remain unanswered. Chapter 4. The pillar that was moved without tools. Imagine a single block of red granite, weighing more than 300 tons, carved from a distant quarry, and set upright without iron, wheels, or modern cranes. An engineering marvel lost to time, a mystery still defying logic. This is not legend. This is reality. And it stands on the banks of the Nile, where no tool capable of such a feat should have existed. Centuries ago, it's in modern Aswan, artisans tapped the desert bedrock, carving a massive obelisk from living stone. They used dolerite hammers harder than copper, striking precise blows for decades, until the form emerged. A tapering pillar, polished smooth, its tip intended to reflect the sun like a star. But once freed from its bed, the obelisk still weighed as much as a small mountain, and its journey had only begun. Ancient texts speak of barges gliding down the Nile, but no records detail how to load 300 tons of granite. No illustrations of wooden sledges, no mention of rollers or sled systems. Yet somehow, the block left the quarry, rolled, or slid, onto a barge, balanced on a single central beam, that should have snapped under the pressure. Local legend says priests purified the water, calming currents for the heavy passage. Boatmen whispered prayers to the Nile goddess, bending the river's will. Even if true, that explains faith, not physics. When the barge reached the riverbank at Heliopolis, they faced a second challenge: transferring the obelisk from water to land. Archaeologists discovered a stone ramp leading up from the shore, but its incline is impossibly steep for a sliding mechanism. Yet traces of wooden beams and lubricated tracks remain, suggesting the use of friction-reducing materials. Samples show a compound of animal fat mixed with crushed quartz, a primitive lubricant, perhaps, but one that should have worn away under extreme weight. And yet, the tracks remain etched, as if carved by the stone itself. At the base of the unfinished obelisk, workers left behind a system of holes drilled into the rock. Small, perfectly spaced cavities, an anchor for ropes or levers, but no evidence of iron fittings. When the pillar reached its destined spot, they needed to stand it upright. Modern engineers use cranes, counterweights, and hydraulic jacks. The ancients had none. They used sand. Thousands of tons of sand built a ramp as tall as the obelisk. The pillar lay horizontal at the top. Then, as sand was removed, from beneath one side, gravity did its work, pivoting the monolith upward. This theory works on paper, but the numbers still boggle the mind. The torque required, the friction prevented, the precision maintained. Once erected, the obelisk has stood for over 3,000 years, surviving floods, earthquakes, and human conflict. Its red granite face remains unblemished, its sides still straight, despite the cyclic heating and cooling of the desert sun. Engineers drilling cores to test its integrity found no microfractures, no weaknesses, only uniform strength. The very ground around it shifted over centuries, yet the pillar refused to lean. It stands as if anchored by something more than stone. In 2000, a documentary crew attempted to replicate the feat. With teams of volunteers, wooden sleds, lubricants, and a replica granite block. They managed to move a 7-ton block a few meters, using experiments with rollers and greased surfaces. But as weight scaled upward, their system failed. They lacked the scale and perhaps the secret knowledge of the ancient builders. Their failure only deepened the mystery. Some fringe theories claim the builders harnessed vibration, using sound to reduce friction. Tuned frequencies pulsed through the rock, loosening it just enough to slide. Others suggest magnetic anomalies. At quarries along the Nile, subtle forces that eased the transport of heavy granite. Researchers are divided, some scoffing, others intrigued. But the truth remains hidden. Beneath sand, stone, and silence. To move 300 tons without iron, to carve perfection in living rock, to align the heavens and the earth in a single pillar. This accomplishment humbles us, reminds us that ancient hands knew secrets we have yet to rediscover. As we walk away from the standing pillar, its shadow lengthening at sunset, we carry one question. If they could achieve this without our modern tools, what else was lost to time? And if the method is gone, was it ever meant for us to find? Chapter 5. The Twin That Disappeared. Two obelisks once stood side by side, carved from the same stone, raised by the same hands, meant to mirror the heavens in symmetry. But one remains, and the other vanished without a trace. No records, no fragments, no ruins, only the memory that it once existed, and a growing silence around why it disappeared. In the great temple complex of Karnak, one of the largest obelisks in Egypt still pierces the sky. It bears the name of Hatshepsut, the powerful female pharaoh, and is said to weigh over 300 tons. But next to its base, on a massive square of carved bedrock, lies a foundation just like it, wide, deep, and cut with mathematical perfection. It's the ghost of a missing twin. Temple records mention the Great Pair, a dual dedication to Ammonius Ra, one obelisk to reflect sunrise, the other sunset. They were not just monuments, they were celestial markers, tied to solstices, equinoxes, and moments where light would strike the temple floor, at precisely calculated times. But today, the alignment is broken. The shadow falls differently. One marker is gone. Some Egyptologists believe the missing obelisk toppled in antiquity, that it cracked, was dismantled, and repurposed as building material for other temples or Roman structures. But no fragments exist anywhere in Karnak. No base stone, no recovered hieroglyphs, no tool marks on the platform. And if it had broken, surely the Egyptians would have documented the event. They recorded famines, eclipses, and wars. Yet no mention is made of a falling twin, An obelisk stands in Rome today, at the Piazza di San Giovanni. It is Egyptian in origin, carved in the reign of Thutmose III, and said to have come from Karnak, but its dimensions do not match the twin. It is shorter, thinner, carved from different granite. It's not the twin. It's another obelisk entirely, which leads to the question, where did the twin go? In the 1980s, ground-penetrating radar around the Karnak precinct picked up a dense anomaly beneath the soil, roughly 90 meters from the surviving obelisk. The shape was long, rectangular, and oddly uniform. Initial enthusiasm was high. Could this be the missing monument, buried intact? But attempts to excavate were blocked. Local authorities cited structural risk, threats to nearby pillars. Funding was pulled, and the effort was abandoned. To this day, the radar image remains unverified, stored in archives, labeled only as Oblong Object 3B. Some researchers believe the obelisk was never destroyed or moved. It was removed, not by erosion or war, but by design, that it was meant to vanish after fulfilling its role. Like a celestial timer, a marker of an era, now past. The missing twin would have cast its final shadow on a specific solstice, aligning with a star that no longer rises in the same place. Its purpose fulfilled, it was taken. Fringe theorists go further. They speak of obelisks not just as stone, but as conduits, devices of energy, aligned with star systems and planetary resonance. In that view, the obelisk didn't just vanish. It transitioned, lifted, removed, extracted by beings beyond our understanding. It sounds impossible, yet the mystery remains. How do you lose 300 tons of polished granite without leaving a trace? Modern Egyptologists shy away from the topic. The official stance is unknown fate. Some publications omit the twin entirely, but because uncertainty undermines authority, and the unexplained casts a long shadow on otherwise pristine narratives. But the base is still there, in Karnak's western court, a clean square of worked stone. That whispers what was once true, that something once stood there, tall, perfect, and now it doesn't. Two were made. One stands, the other is gone. In ancient architecture, symmetry meant power, balance meant harmony, and the loss of a twin is no small matter. Perhaps the mystery is not what happened to the obelisk, but what stopped us from remembering it ever existed. In that forgotten absence, a deeper truth waits, that sometimes the most powerful monument is the one no longer seen. Chapter 6, The Language Etched by No Known Hand. On a windswept plateau in the heart of Nubia, an obelisk stands where no temple lies, far from cities, far from civilization, alone beneath the African sky. Its surfaces are covered in symbols, meticulously carved, flawlessly aligned, speaking in a language no scholar has ever translated. It is not Egyptian, not Coptic, not Sumerian. It belongs to no known script on Earth, and no one knows who wrote it. It was first documented by explorers in 1923, half buried in shifting sand near the Nubian border. Rising roughly 14 meters, its black stone shimmered with a strange mineral sheen. They called it the Black Pillar. A monument out of place, out of time, and out of understanding. No ruins surrounded it, no town nearby, only silence and dust, and the hum of desert winds through etched symbols that shouldn't exist. Dozens of linguists have studied the markings. They twist like vines, intersect like circuitry, and repeat in rhythms that resemble grammar. But not any language ever catalogued. Some symbols resemble stars, others spiral in on themselves. Every attempt to assign phonetic values breaks the patterns. No one can read it, and more unsettling, no known tool could have etched them. The grooves are impossibly fine. Some symbols dip just microns into the surface, like they were drawn with light. A French team in the 1980s conducted microanalysis. Their report was never officially published, but leaked notes describe heat scarring around some glyphs, similar to laser etching, though the obelisk predates any such technology by thousands of years. One researcher claimed the lines were vaporized into the stone, not carved. Another resigned mid-study. He described the symbols in his journal as unsettling in their precision, too clean, too perfect. In 2001, a mathematician from Germany ran the symbol patterns through fractal recognition software. The results were disturbing. Some sequences appeared to model planetary orbits, not as they are now, but as they were 12,000 years ago. One string of glyphs mirrored the precession of Sirius B, a white dwarf star, invisible to the naked eye, yet somehow encoded in a stone in the middle of the Nubian desert. Local tribes speak of a sky people, visitors who brought knowledge of the stars. The Dogon people of Mali far west of the site, have myths that eerily match the obelisk symbols. Their oral tradition describes an object that sang to the stone, carving light into rock, leaving messages to awaken later generations. And while mainstream scholars dismiss the connection, the Dogon's inexplicable awareness of Sirius B remains one of modern anthropology's deepest enigmas. Curiously, the top of the obelisk is broken. Shards that once crowned the pillar are missing. Search teams scan the area, but no debris was found. No capstone. No rubble. It's as if the top was never there. Or it was removed deliberately. Some believe it housed a crystal, the focusing device, or perhaps a receiver. The base of the obelisk is also strange. Not flat, but slightly concave, as if it once rested on something else. A socket? A platform? Or a machine? A private researcher claimed he cracked a partial code in 2018. He posted a brief online translation. 3 phrases. They will return. The sky awaits. Stone carries memory. Within hours, the post vanished. His account deleted. His website offline. He has not published again. Some say he faked it. Others believe he was silenced. Perhaps the symbols were never meant to be read, only felt. Their arrangement induces strange emotional states in some viewers. The sense of pressure, elation, or deep unease. Artists have attempted to replicate them, but never fully succeed. Something gets lost. A detail, a curve, an energy. And so the language remains intact, only on this single obelisk. In the middle of nowhere, pointing nowhere, read by no one, yet still speaking. To anyone willing to listen in silence. What is a language without people? What is a message no one can decode? Perhaps it was never meant for us. Perhaps it waits for the ones who will come after, or return from before. The obelisk stands still. The symbols still shine in twilight. The desert still watches, unblinking, unchanged, waiting for someone who can finally read the stone. Chapter 7. The Needle That Bled Light. In the ancient heart of Thebes, a solitary obelisk rises like a needle through the morning haze. It stands taller than the temple walls around it, sleek, elegant, and impossibly smooth. But this obelisk is not remembered for its size, nor for its pharaoh. It is remembered for something else, a phenomenon witnessed only once, on a single day, when it bled light. The Luxor temple is home to many wonders. Colossal statues, rows of sphinxes, and the famed obelisk of Ramses II. But next to the entrance lies a lesser-known obelisk, rarely mentioned, rarely photographed, and yet the center of one of Egypt's most peculiar legends. It is slimmer, almost spire-like, and it stands on a platform slightly elevated above the rest. Tourists pass it by, but locals call it the Lightbringer. In 1891, a French scholar named Étienne Duclair visited Luxor during the equinox. His diary, discovered decades later in a Marseille attic, contains a strange entry. At precisely noon, the shadow vanished, and then, as the temple fell silent, a golden line split down the obelisk's face. Not reflection, not illusion, but light from within. No one believed the story. It was dismissed as sunstroke, imagination, a poetic flourish in a dying man's notes, until it happened again. In 1977, an Egyptian tour guide named Ibrahim Khalil described a similar event to a group of tourists. At exactly 12:04 p.m., he claimed the obelisk shimmered, and a thin crack down its eastern edge glowed, just for a moment, as if lit from the inside. Several witnesses reported the same thing. One American tourist even snapped a photo. But when developed, the film showed only blank exposure. No light, no obelisk, just a white void, where the image should have been. A geological analysis of the obelisk in 1995 revealed something baffling. The granite wasn't entirely natural. Mixed within the stone were microcrystalline structures, unusual inclusions that reflected light differently. When laser scanned, the obelisk refracted beams irregularly, like a prism made of embedded glass. But no ancient method exists to forge stone with this level of clarity. Modern scientists said it was a geological coincidence. But coincidence doesn't explain what happened next. A team of archaeoastronomers studied the obelisk's alignment. Unlike other Egyptian monuments, this one didn't point true north, or align with solstices. Instead, it faced a narrow celestial corridor, visible only twice a year, when a faint, nearly invisible star rose. Just before dawn, Tos, the second brightest star in the night sky. The obelisk pointed straight at it, only on 2 specific dates, and those were the days. Witnesses claimed the light bled through the stone. In 2004, ground resonance tests were conducted beneath the obelisk. To everyone's surprise, the stone rang like a bell, hollow, Experts were skeptical. How could a 60-foot granite monolith be hollow? But the vibrations suggested a narrow core, as if a cavity ran from base to tip. Endoscopic scans were denied. Preservation laws blocked drilling. But those who heard the sound described it as not an echo, but a hum. A frequency too low for most ears, but strong enough to shake the sand at its base. The papyrus scroll discovered at Deir el-Medina mentions an obelisk of fire, commissioned not by Ramses, but by a forgotten priesthood. It speaks of binding the sky to the stone, and of light that flows upward. The scroll is incomplete, burnt, as if someone wanted its secrets erased, but one line remains intact. And when the sky breathes through it, the stone will bleed light, and the gods will see we still remember. How does a stone bleed light? How does a monument hum beneath the earth? Why does no one speak of it? Why is it not on tourist maps? Perhaps it was always meant to be hidden in plain sight. A monument to a knowledge we no longer hold. A secret buried in vibrational code, seen only by those who arrive at the right time, in the right state of silence. The obelisk still stands, still silent, still waiting. And once a year, just once, the sun hits its edge just right, and a whisper of golden light spills down its face. Reminder that even stone can speak. Chapter 8. The obelisk that was too perfect. In the scorching basin of the Sahara, far from the Nile, far from any known quarry, an obelisk stands in impossible silence. It has no cracks, no chips, no inscriptions, just a smooth, reflective black surface, perfectly symmetrical on every axis. So perfect, in fact, that modern engineers say, it shouldn't exist. This is the obelisk that was too perfect. It was first photographed from a reconnaissance plane in 1972, by accident. A glint in the sand, like a mirror catching sunlight. At first, it was dismissed as a natural rock formation. But when a geological team finally reached the site, they were stunned. A pillar of black stone, 40 feet high, 12 feet wide at the base, tapering with a precision measured in millimeters. No inscriptions, no erosion, just an impossible artifact, alone in the desert. Engineers who examined it years later described it as non-Euclidean. Each side was cut at exactly 90 degrees. Each edge ran straight for its entire height. No curvature, no variance, no tool marks. Laser scans showed flatness within 0.0001 millimeters, a level of precision no ancient civilization should have been capable of. In fact, most modern tools would struggle to recreate it. In granite this size, without flaw, samples taken from its surface identified the stone as anorthosite, a rare, light-reflecting rock, usually found on the moon. Yes, the moon. NASA confirmed that the exact mineral composition matched lunar samples brought back during the Apollo missions. The match wasn't partial, it was exact, and yet no one could explain how it got there. Was it a coincidence? A terrestrial twin? Or something that once came from beyond? There are no nearby quarries, no roads, no ancient settlements. The nearest source of similar stone on Earth is over 900 miles away, deep beneath the Scandinavian Shield. No known culture ever transported stone of this kind or weight across desert terrain. Even stranger, the base shows no signs of dragging, levering, or placement. No foundation stones, no construction debris. It is as if the obelisk simply appeared. Despite the Sahara's brutal sun, the obelisk remains cool to the touch. Even at midday, thermal scans reveal it absorbs no heat, no infrared signature, no thermal expansion. Scientists described it as thermally neutral, as if it exists outside the rules of the environment around it, unaffected by time, by weather, by decay. One researcher whispered, "It's like it doesn't want to be here." Compasses brought near the obelisk refuse to work. The needle spins erratically, or freezes completely. Birds refuse to nest nearby. Insects avoid the stone. Even local nomads won't camp within its sight. They call it the Silent One, a stone that listens and remembers. One legend says it was placed by watchers to monitor the sands. Another says it fell from the sky. In 1991, a group attempted to chip away a sample. Industrial diamond drills snapped instantly on contact. Blades shattered, bits melted. The stone remained untouched. Sound tests revealed it rings like a bell, at frequencies too low for the human ear. A deep, resonating hum that triggers anxiety in sensitive listeners, as if it's alive or listening. In a world filled with broken ruins, crumbling temples, and eroded monuments, this single obelisk remains flawless. It's not just ancient, it's ageless, too perfect, too cold, Too silent. Its precision mocks our understanding. Its presence challenges our history. And perhaps that's the point. Maybe it was never meant to be understood. Maybe it was never built, only placed. And until we accept that some mysteries are not from this earth, it will continue standing, watching, waiting, perfect in its defiance of everything we think we know. Chapter 9. The Shadow Beneath the Granite. Most obelisks reach for the sky, but one draws the eye downward, not for what it reveals, but for what it hides. In the center of an otherwise forgotten plateau in modern-day Ethiopia, there stands a fractured granite obelisk, tipped, broken, and scarred by time. It's not the stone itself that raises questions, but what lies beneath it. For deep below the obelisk's shattered base, there is something ancient, something unexplained, a shadow in the stone. In 1993, a team of regional archaeologists, surveying the ruins of Aksum, discovered a curious sinkhole beneath one of the lesser-known obelisks. Thinking it the result of erosion, they attempted a basic excavation, but what they found beneath the surface was not soil, not bedrock, but hollow space, a corridor lined with perfectly cut stone blocks, leading directly under the base of the obelisk. And beyond that, darkness. The passage descended at a perfect 22-degree angle, not carved roughly, but engineered. Each stair identical, each wall free of tool marks. It went on for 93 steps. A chamber, circular, 9 meters wide. No inscriptions, no murals. Only one thing stood in its center, a black pedestal, and on that pedestal, an indentation, roughly the shape of the obelisk's missing tip. When the broken top of the obelisk was analyzed, its fractures were jagged, unnatural, as if something had forcibly removed its upper segment. Digital models showed that the tip would have fit into the pedestal's indentation perfectly. But why would the tip of a sky-reaching monument need to rest beneath the earth? Why mirror above and below, unless they were part of the same system? Upon entering the chamber, several researchers reported feelings of disorientation. Compasses failed. Cameras glitched. Some claimed to hear a low droning sound emanating from the walls. A geophysicist brought in for testing discovered a concentrated magnetic anomaly right where the pedestal stood, stronger than the surrounding rock, focused like a signal, but no source was ever found. Behind the pedestal, a perfectly rectangular slab of stone blocked a second passage. Attempts to move or crack it failed. Ground-penetrating radar showed another corridor beyond, stretching deeper into the earth. But the door refused to yield. It was not just heavy, it was fused, like it was never meant to be opened again. Locals told stories of voices heard under the rock, of men who disappeared, trying to break the seal, of curses, whispers, and waking dreams. One elder described the site as the place where the stone listens. Another warned, the pillar fell, but the shadow stayed. When asked what that meant, he only smiled and said, "Not all monuments are for the living." After a year of study, the project was quietly shut down. Funding vanished. Reports were never published. When asked, officials claimed the chamber was geologically unremarkable, but satellite scans taken years later show faint heat signatures still rising from beneath the broken obelisk. Though no geothermal activity exists in the region, something down there is not at rest. Obelisks are symbols of aspiration, of ascent, of divine connection. But what if some were anchors, devices that tethered something below? What if this obelisk didn't just reach up, but reach down, to contain something no longer meant to rise? The shadow beneath the granite remains. The chamber remains. And so does the silence. But every so often, when the sun strikes the broken stone just right, the tip glows faintly, as if calling home, to a fragment, no longer above, but deep, deep below. Chapter 10. The city that followed its obelisk. Most cities are built, then monuments are raised. Stones come later, obelisks come last. But in the high desert of northern Peru, that pattern is reversed. Because here, there stands an obelisk that predates the city that surrounds it, by centuries, maybe more. No one knows who built it. No one knows why. And yet, every structure in the ancient city aligns with it. It is as if the city didn't choose its location. It followed its obelisk. The site is called Chankillo, a mysterious complex of towers, walls, and observatories. But nearly 2 kilometers east, an isolated monolith rises, over 30 feet tall, chiseled from a single slab of white granite that doesn't match any known rock in the region. No inscriptions, no decorations, just presence. Archaeologists were confused from the beginning. The structures of Chankillo are roughly 2,300 years old, but carbon dating from beneath the obelisk's base suggests it was placed over 3,000 years ago. The city came later. When researchers mapped Chanquillo, they noticed something strange. No matter where you stood, in a home, in a plaza, on a tower, the obelisk remained visible. Not just visible, central. Every street, every doorway, every structure, oriented around it, with near-perfect geometric consistency. From above, the city forms a spiral, an ever-tightening pattern, wrapped around the obelisk. Like gravity, or worship, the obelisk casts a shadow that moves with eerie precision. At sunrise, it reaches across a stone circle, etched into the earth. At noon, it disappears. And in the evening, it points directly at the highest of Chanquillo's 13 towers. Astronomers confirmed the obelisk is a solar tracker, able to mark solstices, equinoxes, and celestial shifts with stunning accuracy. But the builders of Chanquillo never inscribed this knowledge, as if they inherited the obelisk and simply adapted. In 2009, a radar team discovered a void beneath the obelisk, roughly 3 meters deep, a hollow chamber filled with fine sand and lined with copper plates. The purpose of the chamber is unknown. There were no artifacts, no bones, just two things: a stone sphere, polished perfectly round, and a thin slit in the chamber ceiling, lined up exactly with the top of the obelisk and the rising sun of the summer solstice. This was no coincidence. This was design. Local legends say the obelisk sings at dawn. Tourists have dismissed it as wind, but some recordings suggest low-frequency tones emanating from the base, only during solar alignments. One frequency, when isolated, matched a tone used by ancient Chinese tuning bowls, used in rituals to simulate harmony with the cosmos. Tone, built into a stone. No one should have been able to tune. One archaeologist proposed a wild idea, that the obelisk wasn't made by the Chanquillo people, but was placed by an earlier civilization, one whose cities have been erased by time, or buried beneath the desert floor. He suggested the obelisk was a signal, a marker, and Chanquillo was built not as a city, but as an observatory. To understand it, his peers laughed. Funding was pulled, and he disappeared from public view. But the idea remains, because the obelisk still stands, and no other theory explains it fully. By 200 BCE, the city of Chanquillo was gone, abandoned, collapsed. No sign of war, no sign of famine, only wind, stone, and silence. The obelisk remained. No one tried to bury it, no one tried to destroy it. It was simply left behind, as if whatever knowledge it held had been learned or feared. What if some monuments are not built by people, but find them? What if this obelisk didn't serve a king, but summoned a city? Perhaps the people of Chanquillo did not build their world around a symbol. Perhaps they built it around a presence, a silent witness, guiding their homes, their stars, their final days. The city is gone. The people are forgotten, but the obelisk still stands, and every morning, its shadow still moves, as if the city had never left. Chapter 11. The obelisk that survived fire. In the heart of a ruined temple, where walls are scorched and columns lie shattered, one structure remains untouched. It is not protected, it is not hidden, but it has endured what nothing else could. Fire raged through this place. Stone cracked, metal melted, relics vanished. And yet, the obelisk stands, unmarked, unburned, unbroken. The monument that should have fallen, somehow, survived the flame. In present-day Iran, near the edge of the ancient Elamite Empire, lies the ruins of a forgotten sanctuary. Locals call it the Black Place, not because of its stone, but because of what happened there. Centuries ago, a massive fire consumed the temple grounds. Scholars suspect invasion. Some believe rebellion, but no records remain, only ash. And in the center, an obelisk still stands, as if the fire bowed around it. Fire maps conducted by forensic archaeologists showed something strange. The highest temperatures, those that melted copper and baked clay, converged on the central courtyard. Everything within 20 meters was destroyed. Everything except the obelisk. Its surface was clean. No charring, no warping, no chemical alteration. Even the sandstone it stood on was burned to black glass. But the obelisk's base remained cool, unaffected. The material baffled scientists. The obelisk appeared to be basalt, a volcanic stone, but not flame-proof. And yet, it showed none of the thermal expansion expected under such conditions. In fact, thermographic scans conducted years later revealed something chilling. The obelisk had absorbed none of the ambient heat at all. It didn't resist fire. It ignored it, running down its northern face. A single line of glyphs remains. They do not match Elamite writing. They do not match cuneiform or hieroglyphs. They appear burned into the stone, but not by fire. Spectral imaging shows they're made of fused crystalline silica. Not paint, not chisel, not ink. They shimmer under infrared, but vanish in daylight. One phrase, translated loosely by symbol matching, reads, "Stone remembers what flame forgets." Ancient scrolls recovered from nearby caves speak of a witness stone, a sacred object believed to record events. Through vibration, not ink. It was said that during the burning of the temple, the obelisk spoke in silence, vibrated gently, and then stopped. Since then, it has not moved, not shifted, not changed. But on rare nights, during equinoxes, locals claim to hear humming in the air around it, like a voice too old to speak aloud. During the 1930s, a British expedition tried to excavate the obelisk. They brought tools, workers, cranes. But on the morning of the move, the equipment failed. The generator fried. 2 of the team members fell violently ill. And when they tried again, a small earthquake, localized only to the site, rattled the stone back into place, claiming mechanical complications. But their journals tell a different story, of unease, shadows, and something watching. In 2016, infrared satellite imagery showed a strange glow over the temple site. No heat signature, no active fires, but a glowing aura centered on the obelisk. Just before the autumn equinox, drones captured footage of what looked like flickering flame, dancing along the stone's surface. Yet when scientists visited days later, the stone was cool. The phenomenon had vanished. What kind of fire? Doesn't burn? The obelisk doesn't tell us what happened. It doesn't show us who burned the temple. It doesn't cry for the dead, or mark the names of kings. But it still stands. And in its standing, it speaks. Not of power, not of conquest, but of memory. Stone that survives fire carries more than history. It carries judgment. It carries silence. And in that silence, perhaps, the truth still burns. Just beneath the surface. Chapter 12. The one that sank then returned. It vanished beneath the earth over 1,000 years ago. Swallowed by soil. Forgotten by time. For generations, the ground held its secret. And then, it came back. Not eroded, not broken, but whole. No excavation. No intervention. One day it was not there. And then, to us. This is the story of the obelisk that sank and then returned. In a remote valley in western Turkey, locals tell stories of a tall black stone that once stood near the river bend. They say it watched over their ancestors, marking the solstice, guiding harvests. Then one year, the ground trembled, the river changed course, and the obelisk was gone. Not toppled, not broken, just missing. Over time, people forgot. The fields were planted, the land was tamed, and memory faded into myth. In 2012, after a month of heavy rainfall, a farmer tilling his land struck stone. At first, he thought it was bedrock, but the more he cleared, the more impossible it seemed. What emerged was an obelisk, 30 feet tall, polished basalt, smooth as glass. It stood upright, perfectly vertical. No marks of disturbance around it. No debris. No evidence of machinery. It had simply risen. Scientists rushed to investigate. They expected to find signs of tectonic activity. Uplift, slippage, erosion. But ground scans showed no fractures. No faults. No landslides. The earth around the obelisk was undisturbed, layered normally, as if it had always been there. Yet the obelisk's surface had no dirt, no mineral staining, no weathering, as if it had never been buried at all. One face bore an unfamiliar set of symbols, deeply etched yet invisible in full sunlight. Only at dawn and dusk, when the angle of the sun was low, did the carvings glow, with a faint blue shimmer. Under ultraviolet light, the characters rearranged, as if shifting in place. No one could decipher them, but one pattern kept repeating, a spiral pointing inward, surrounded by 7 dots. Some called it a map, others, a countdown. The elders of the nearby village spoke in hushed tones. They remembered the stone's disappearance. As punishment, a sleep imposed by ancient forces. They say the obelisk was not made to be seen always, that it reveals itself only when a cycle is complete, when the land is ready to remember what it once knew. They warned researchers not to touch it, not to dig, not to measure. It had returned, but not for them. Carbon dating from the soil around its base matched layers nearly 1,000 years old. Yet the obelisk's edges were razor sharp. Its polished surface reflected the sky. Like water, laser analysis found no tool marks, no erosion, as if it was just finished. or had never aged. It seemed, meant nothing to it. During a thunderstorm, a nearby seismograph picked up rhythmic pulses, emanating from the stone. Not from thunder, not from tectonics, but from within the obelisk itself. They came in perfect intervals, 3 seconds apart, lasting exactly 7 hours. The sound was subsonic, too deep for human ears, but animals fled, birds vanished, insects died, and then the pulses stopped. The stone returned to silence. How does a monument vanish, and then return? How does a memory go underground, only to rise again, unchanged? Was it buried by the earth, or withdrawn by something else? And now that it's back, what does it want? The people nearby have already decided. They do not approach. They do not speak its name, because some monuments don't return to be seen. They return to see. Chapter 13, The Light That Never Touched the Obelisk. Stone is meant to reflect the sun. Obelisks especially, built to catch the morning light, to cast long shadows, to mark time. But what if one never did? What if a monument, standing in the open, refused light? This is not poetry. This is not myth. This is the story of an obelisk that stood for centuries, but never once felt the touch of the sun. In the limestone valleys of Croatia, near an abandoned hilltop village, there is a plateau where nothing grows. No grass, no trees, just stone. And in its center, an obelisk, jet black, impossibly smooth, 9 meters tall. Locals call it the shadow pillar. Not because of what it casts, but because of what it lacks. No matter the time of day, the sun never seems to land on it. Photos show it as dim. Drone footage shows it as dull. Even at high noon, it appears wrapped in shadow. In 2021, a documentary crew tried to film it. Multiple high-end cameras were used. Daylight conditions were optimal. But every image showed the obelisk, as if it were behind a veil, faded, colorless, blurry at the edges. Even infrared failed. The monument radiated no heat, no thermal signature, no warmth. It stood in light, but remained cold. They tried again at sunset, again at dawn. Same result. Light refused it, or it refused light. A team of physicists brought in specialized instruments to study surface reflectivity. The results were contradictory. One device recorded the surface as 98% absorbent, another as 92% reflective. Two impossible extremes from the same stone. One scientist remarked, "It's like the stone doesn't exist until you touch it." But even then, the human hand could barely feel texture. It was smooth, but unnaturally so, almost frictionless. One night, under a clear sky, the obelisk appeared to glow, not with brightness, but with faint silver threads. A pattern emerged, circular symbols, like lunar phases, surrounding a central spiral. They were invisible by day, visible only under the moon. And when photographed, the symbols didn't appear in the image. They could only be seen with the naked eye, and only if you stood very still. Villagers refused to go near it. They spoke of a time when the sun vanished for 3 days, and the pillar stood glowing in its place. They called it the Lightless One, a monument left behind by the sky itself. Some claimed it was a marker for an eclipse. That never came. Others believed it was a gate, opened only in complete darkness. A few whispered of people who camped nearby and never woke up, not because they vanished, but because they changed. One researcher proposed a radical idea, that the obelisk wasn't meant to cast a shadow, but to absorb all of them. He theorized it was designed as an inverted sundial, not to mark time, but to erase it. Standing in its presence for long reportedly caused feelings of timelessness. Test subjects lost track of hours. Some experienced moments of déjà vu. Others claimed they never blinked once. The stone didn't measure time. It swallowed it. Standard compasses spin erratically within 20 feet of the obelisk. GPS coordinates glitch. Watches tick slower. Phones drain. Instruments used to track light exposure showed readings lower than the surrounding atmosphere. One physicist called it a negative of illumination, as if the stone itself is erasing photons. That paper was never published. The lab lost funding, but the raw data still exists. If a stone stands in the open, and yet never reflects, never warms, never brightens, is it truly here, or is it something else, masquerading as stone? The obelisk in the Croatian plateau still stands. No plaque, no markers, no protection. The villagers pass it in silence. Birds avoid its shadow. Even clouds seem to thin above it. And every evening, when the sun disappears, it seems just a little more alive. Chapter 14, The Tower That Refused to Fall. it should have collapsed. By all known laws of gravity, weathering, and time, it should have fallen centuries ago. But it didn't. Earthquakes shook the mountains beneath it. Storms ripped through its valley. Entire civilizations crumbled, while it stood untouched. This wasn't resilience. This was defiance. And the longer it stands, the more it feels like it was never meant to fall. In the highlands of southern Peru, there stands an obelisk-shaped tower, tilted nearly 11 degrees off-center, more than the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But unlike Pisa, there's no support, no scaffolding, no anchors, just a massive single stone column, balancing on a cracked platform that's been slowly sinking for over 1,000 years. Any modern architect would say, it's structurally impossible. But there it stands. Geologists drilled around the base, expecting to find a deep root system, stone beneath stone, a balancing trick of ancient engineering. But beneath it, there was nothing. Only air pockets, loose soil, and fragments of ash. From a volcanic eruption dated 400 years ago, the obelisk had no foundation. It should have tumbled long ago. But something kept it upright. Over the centuries, this region has experienced 19 measurable earthquakes, 2 of them classified as major. Entire villages were leveled, temples cracked, roads split. And yet the obelisk, tilting in plain sight, did not budge. Seismographs placed around it during modern quakes showed a shocking result. The base absorbed vibrations, but did not transfer them upward. It was as if the earth shook, but the stone refused to listen. Wind studies show something else. Airflow maps reveal that storms curve slightly around the monument. No matter how strong the wind, the tower shows no signs of erosion, no lichen, no cracks from water expansion, no weathering at all. Its surface is smoother now than when it was first mapped. Over 100 years ago, time has touched everything around it, but not the tower. Halfway up the side, barely visible, are carvings in an unknown script. They were discovered by accident, when sunlight hit them at just the right angle. During the winter solstice, the symbols were matched to none, but one image stood out, a spiral breaking apart, surrounded by 6 figures, all falling backward. Some believe it's a warning, others say it's a memory of when the tower didn't fall, but others did. In 1987, a mountaineer attempted to scale the obelisk, to place a measuring device on its peak. Midway up, he stopped moving. Witnesses said he froze, staring upward for nearly 30 minutes, without speaking. When he finally descended, he refused to explain what he saw. He left Peru that year. He never climbed again. In an unpublished interview, he said only this: "It's not leaning. We are." Engineers from 3 countries tried to model its shape. They built replicas using modern cranes and supports. Each time, the replica collapsed under its own weight. When tilted more than 7 degrees, the material itself was no different. Granite. High density, but common. So why did the original survive? Was it denser? Lighter? When samples were taken, the stone registered a magnetic field. Small, steady, unusual. But more disturbing was this: that same field pulled slightly against nearby compasses. It was leaning, but pulling back. No one can explain why the tower still stands, and no one dares to alter it. In a way, it's become a monument to paradox, a structure that mocks decay, a survivor, in a world where nothing is built to last. Perhaps it holds a secret in its tilt. Perhaps it's standing on nothing, because it doesn't need to fall, because it was never meant to. While cities burn, rivers dry, and stone crumbles, the tower leans, but it does not bow. Chapter 15. The secret they took when they removed it. It was here. For centuries, it stood. People built around it. Legends formed beneath it. Maps marked it. Pilgrims sought it. And then, one day, it was gone. Not destroyed. Not fallen. Removed. By whose hands? No one can say. By what authority? No record remains. But the land remembers. And what they took, left behind a silence, louder than any monument. In the salt flats of southern Tunisia, near the ruined city of Al-Mazim, there once stood a red sandstone obelisk, taller than anything for miles. Desert travelers called it the Sentinel, a beacon for navigation, a mystery for scholars. Early 20th century photos show it clearly. Locals described it as smooth, warm to the touch, and humming faintly at dusk. Then in 1991, a research team arrived to document it. They never found it. Not a broken base, not a fallen shard, just flat earth, as if it had never been there. A French anthropologist, Dr. Leclerc, filmed the obelisk in 1985. In his journals, he noted a peculiar detail. When played back, his video showed static. Only when the obelisk came into frame. He brought the footage to a lab in Marseille. They enhanced it, corrected it, and so the stone appeared only as a flicker, a blur. Months later, that tape was lost in a fire that consumed the entire archive. In 2018, a hidden room was discovered beneath an abandoned colonial outpost, built near the site. Inside they found a crate, wrapped in oiled cloth. Inside the crate was a single metal sheet, engraved with diagrams. It depicted the obelisk in profile, surrounded by symbols, matching none known to modern language. In one corner, a date scratched in Latin, Rima Viter, 1979. Removed. But by who? There are no military records, no mining reports, no satellite logs. Only the drawing remains. The patch of land where the obelisk once stood is still unstable. Drones hover slightly off balance above it. GPS signals shift by several meters. Plants refuse to grow there, and compasses spin slowly, as if searching for a direction that no longer exists. Locals say they still hear it, Elohim, when the wind is quiet, looking for its source. Villagers who lived nearby were interviewed over the years. Elder generations recalled the stone vividly, but those born after 1980 claimed it never existed. Even when shown photographs, they insisted, this is not real. Their own family records, drawings, writings, oral stories, made no mention of the obelisk, as if memory itself was scraped clean. After sandstorms, satellite images sometimes show faint impressions where the obelisk once stood. Geometric outlines, circles within circles, a spiral at the center. No one has been able to match them to any known architectural template. Some believe it's a landing site. Others think it was a machine. One thing is certain, whatever it was, it's left an imprint, deeper than stone. A declassified document surfaced in 2007, hinting that classified artifacts were extracted from Tunisia in the late 70s by a joint task force involving at least 2 nations. But the document was redacted. No names, no object identifiers, only a phrase repeated twice. Do not attempt reinstallation. Was the obelisk a beacon, a transmitter, a lock, or was it a warning that we've now silenced? We often speak of what ancient monuments tell us. Their carvings, their size, their impossible construction. But what about the monuments that are missing? What do they whisper? By their absence? The obelisk that once stood in Tunisia left no pieces, no proof, no ending, only questions. In the wind, where something greater used to be. Chapter 16. The final light that shouldn't exist. There are lights that guide, lights that warn, and lights that are never meant to be seen. This light, flickering from a forgotten stone, had no source, no fuel, and no explanation. It came only once a year. At the exact moment, the sky stood still, and when it appeared, everything else faded. This is the story of the final light that shouldn't exist. In the deserts of southern Mongolia, far from any known trade route, there lies a perfect stone circle. 6 obelisks arranged with absolute precision, each identical in size, spaced evenly around a central platform. There's no writing, no carvings, no signs of who built them. They stand in silence, until one night each year, on the winter solstice. Then, they awaken. On December 21st, as the sun sets and temperatures drop, the central platform begins to glow. Not brightly, not dramatically, just enough to see the outline of something impossible. A narrow shaft of light shoots straight upward from the center. A perfect beam, cold white, unwavering. It lasts exactly 7 minutes, then vanishes, without a trace. No heat, no energy signature, no known reflection. Just light, where none should be. Scientists attempted to trace it. No underground wiring, no chemical residue, no geothermal activity. The stone is ordinary basalt, but the beam behaves like no known form of light. It doesn't scatter, it doesn't bend, and it doesn't illuminate anything, except the air it passes through. Even stranger, insects freeze mid-flight within it. Birds veer away. Sound dampens around the circle, as if the world is holding its breath. During the light event, each surrounding obelisk begins to resonate, not with sound, but with low-frequency vibrations, detected by seismometers. Their surfaces hum, in different frequencies, as if they're communicating. When mapped, the frequencies form a pattern, a waveform, encoded with repeating primes. A language? A signature? Or a countdown? No one knows. During the light phenomenon, cameras captured something even more strange. The shadows cast by the obelisks did not align with the beam. Instead, curved away from it, like repelled magnetism. Even more disturbing, there was a 7th shadow, but no 7th obelisk. When the light ended, The shadow vanished, and the footage was never recovered. Only still images remain. On one expedition, local children were brought to observe the event. They described seeing shapes inside the light, floating symbols, rotating slowly, like a language suspended in air. Adults saw nothing. Instruments detected nothing. But every child drew the same image afterward, a spiral of 7 rings, around a tall black tower. The tower was not there, but somehow, they all remembered it. In 2022, the beam did not appear. The solstice came. The obelisks remained, but the light never rose. Teams waited, measured, nothing. For the first time in recorded history, the circle stayed dark. Then, on the 3rd day, the central platform cracked. A thin fissure, running through its core. Beneath it, only sand. The light was gone, and it has not returned since. Why did it appear only once a year? Why did it stop? Was it a signal? A test? Or a memory? Some believe it was the final key, in a sequence long forgotten. Others think it was never for us, just a side effect of something older. Watching. The desert is quiet again. The obelisks do not hum, and the sky remains still. But somewhere, in the silence of stone, the question lingers. What was the final light trying to show us? And what? Did it stop?